Nestled in the mountains of northeast Tennessee lies the city of Kingsport, with a population of approximately 45,000 people. The area is rich in history, culture, and industry. With a relatively low crime rate, the residents feel safe and secure. But it has not always been that way. One particular area of the city has been prone to criminal activity and violence. This is the story of South Central Kingsport, a community riddled with drugs and shootings. But through the cooperative efforts of the Kingsport Police Department, the Kingsport Housing and Redevelopment Authority, the South Central Kingsport Weed and Seed Program, and many other entities through the installation and utilization of public surveillance cameras, the community has now turned itself around. This is South Central Kingsport, and this is their story.
The Riverview area, several years ago, actually when they first built these projects here in this area, actually it was a God-sent thing to have decent housing, because at that time before that, there was a lot of slum areas in Kingsport. And so when they built these apartments that gave people a place with running water and a good place to live. And then later in the years, and drugs moved into the area, and at one time it was so bad that people were afraid to come out of their houses.
Drugs was just running rampant, and it just looked like it was hopeless.
The area where most of the activity was, with the drug dealing on the streets and stuff like that, people couldn't drive through the Riverview area without being stopped or approached about buying drugs.
Crime was bad. The drugs, especially on Dale Street and where I live here, the drugs were just really taking over.
At one point, the playground was a drug haven. The kids couldn't go over there because the drug dealers was over there. The kids couldn't go up and down the street because the drug dealers was there.
At one time, it was hard to just walk up and down the street because you run into the drug. They're selling drugs in front of your house.
And I mean, it was just night and day. There was no rest to be seen. You could be working in your yard, and somebody would probably stop and ask you if you knew where they could get some drugs. I mean, it was just terrible.
Actually, I remember a time when they were shooting crap on people's steps, and they couldn't come out the front door. And I remember they selling drugs in the street like you was peddling apples if you'd walk up and down the streets.
You'd start walking where you'd have to crisscross the streets to avoid drug dealers. And I decided this is not what I should have to do.
If you look and you think how things progressed. I think what happens is things drop through the crack until something critically happens.
I thought that Kingsport City, I don't think they thought Riverview was part of the city. There was very little that they was doing for this section over here.
The shooting incident that involved a very young girl named Jaleesa Ferguson, who was actually out playing in her front yard on a Friday evening about 11 o'clock p.m. and a shot rang out, approximately around 11, maybe a little bit past that, and one shot from a rifle, and that one shot hit her and killed her instantly. And from that tragic event, it started to change everything now, and what we at that point know as Riverview, as well as what we now call the South Central community.
She was on her grandmother's porch, and it shouldn't have happened. I mean, you know. But I think I lived here when all of that took place.
So I heard about it that night. You know, and it was real disturbing that a child got shot. And you know, I don't care what the child, what color they are. It's just a bad thing for a child to get killed. You know, I think I went down the street when I heard about it and everything else. And it was real disturbing. Now, you look at how things happen. I think that gave Kingsport a wake-up call to say, hey, if this is happening, you know, because it's in Riverview, it could very easily happen over in Lynn Garden or any other place. So these guys, they could care less about the environment. All they care about is the money that they're going to receive, and if somebody takes their money, they're going to do something about it. And if you're an innocent bystander, that's tough.
She's my cousin. She's my second cousin. Anyway, she got shot when she got little.
If I may say something, I think that may have been an eye-opener when the Ferguson incident happened, because the drug dealing and trafficking was probably worse than people realized it was at that time. So, and that opened everybody's eyes.
I mean, to think of a little girl, a little baby, being shot in the head over a pocket full of crack. It just, I think that brought everything to a head.
That changed the whole thing in the Riverview area. Kingsport, the mayor, Mayor Blazer, and the people down there, they got together, and that changed the whole thing over in this area.
Soon after I was elected mayor in 2005, we had an incident of shooting in one of the neighborhoods. We had a nightclub that had been a problem, and we'd had some problems in this neighborhood. I think, Jack, there had been an earlier shooting, maybe even before 2005, hadn't there?
That shooting actually led to the formation of the Riverview Catch Division task team as a part of Kingsport Tomorrow. And our former mayor, Jeanette Blazer, was the executive director at that time and led the community and those who were part of the city in a visioning process for that particular neighborhood.
We were able to obtain the first weed and seed, which was targeted primarily with public housing, the $100,000, and then our application for the other program, the $175,000 program, and which became a catalyst for the funding for the security cameras.
Well, I think what we've heard is the partnerships, and nothing ever happens in a vacuum. And the cameras really came about, one, by having a courageous leadership during a very trying time where you're willing to go out and meet with people who you know are upset and hear what they have to say and then do something about it. And cameras was one of the items that the neighborhood wanted, the South Central area wanted, and it became doable because we had the city involved, and we had the police department involved, and we had the Weed and Seed group involved, and the housing authority was willing to participate. And it took all three entities sharing in both the cost and the cooperation to make sure that happened. When I think back about just the public housing process, in our application process, we had found that when we offered an apartment in the Riverview neighborhood, that many people didn't take it because of the high crime rate and the fear of their safety. And we actually had a separate page that said, if you were offered an apartment in the Riverview neighborhood, would you be willing to take it? Because it took so many offers to finally find someone that would take that apartment. And after the cameras were installed and implemented, it became completely the opposite, that people were requesting a Riverview apartment because they saw that it was a safe neighborhood, because of the cameras, because of the involvement of the residents around, because of the open lines of communication, and because we had community police that were out there walking on the sidewalk and talking to people and made themselves available. So it was really quite a transformation, and we look forward to continuing to see that in the other areas of Kingsport where we're having that trouble too.
Chief Osborne opened up a real good door for the community when he allowed the Citizen Police Academy to occur. That process allows citizens in the Riverview area, in the South Central Kingsport area, to really interface with officers and really see what the officers go through. Mm-hmm. But it did something else. At the same time as those cameras being installed, it allowed those citizens to say, hey, this really works. And I think probably one of the most impressive elements of the cameras occurred when a citizen looked out and they zoomed in on a cigarette butt that was lying on the ground, and you could almost read the label of the cigarette to tell what kind it was. Sure. And it showed just how effective that camera could be, and that was a main selling point to the citizen.
Central 5503 traffic stop. 5503.
On Sundays and Saturdays now, you see kids out riding their bicycles and riding up and down the street, and you see them over at the splash pad. And I mean, you really see what the kids should be doing.
The Riverview is a good place to live now. I'd say this area is about one of the safest places in Kingsport. And as of now, we really enjoy this area, and people want to live here. They don't live here because they have to. There are people live here because they want to live in this area.
There's no definition of how things are now. I guess if you had to define how things were versus now, it's unreal. You can actually come down through the street and you don't see anybody there at all. Where before you would see people on both sides of the road dealing drugs right here in the neighborhood. We complained about it and this type of thing, but you know, those guys are smart too. They know when to run and hide and when to come back out. See, and that's just the situation. But now that we have cameras and other things like we got a new spray pad, they knocked out the old pool. We've got activities here that we keep the kids real busy now. See, so as long as you keep them occupied and steer them in the right directions, things will get better.
We get wet, and my friend Shasha. Shasha, come over. Okay, so talk about the splash pad. The splash pad is so fun. The Riverview splash pad is fun. I come here every day, like, to play in it. And I see my friends every day. Yeah, and it's like really cold. Like when you're hot, you can go out, go to the splash pad. That's why I'm happy that they made it and everything. And it's not. That's why. Thank you, Mayor.